If you don't know, we are leaving the church that we inherited to become the church that Jesus intended, which thoroughly excites me. It's been a long time coming. We're exploring this very fresh, ancient, innovative idea of an alternative, innovative community. We would call that church, but by using the term church, it's preloaded. It's a damaged word in many ways. We believe in the church, we're passionate about the church, but just a different way of explaining how we are moving forward. We are coining that an AIC. See, it even exists for a few reasons. Penultimately, we are looking at the fact that we are raising a family to bring heaven to earth. Most of you will know that. That's the goal, that's the mandate. But also that boils down essentially to two things. The first one, which again we'll revisit in the next month and a half, 2 months, is this idea of plexus, which we'll unpack again. We all have an individual mandate. You have an individual mandate. We cannot get out of the fact that all of us as individuals, you and me and the person next to you, have a mandate to reach people with the love of God. Not in a weird way, not in a Bible-bashing way, not in a horrible way, but just by being good people, kind people, loving people, non-judgmental people, people around us, loving our neighbor. It really shouldn't be that hard. I think as Christians, for some reason, it's a bit of a struggle sometimes, a bit weird, but we can't get over the fact that that is our individual mandate. But then we have this other mandate, this communal mandate, this mandate that churches tried to wrestle with and tried to get right over years and centuries, thousands of years, and it's something we're still wrestling with today, but we believe that by looking back, we can move forward. That actually if we take into effect the methodology of the current modern church, particularly in the UK and the West, we know it's not working. We know it is ineffective. We know the data says this is not great. We know the church is either stagnant or declining en masse. So that's a research fact. We cannot deny that, which means what we're currently doing isn't working. And so we have to be brave. We have to be humble. We have to go, okay, maybe something's misaligned. And so that's brought us to this idea of the AIC, this communal mandate. Becoming a new humanity. What does that look like? What is church meant to look like? Because I promise you it isn't just Sunday mornings and a Bible study and small groups. Okay, if we've reduced it to that, we're in trouble, and largely we have. Certainly in the evangelical world. That's kind of what it looks like. I want to say it is so much more than that. God has so much more for you than that. Beyond your imagination. And so I thank you for the response we got last week, actually. I was hesitant. How's this going to, but some of the responses have been gold, and it's meant a lot because this is different. This isn't a usual kind of practice. And can I be honest as well? I love all this stuff, and this is important, but I just want to preach Jesus. And I get that. We're going to get back to that. But we have to address the elephant in the room about church and change how we're doing things to actually let Jesus be the center of our attention. So over the last couple of months, we've been exploring in some detail this idea of the AIC. We've shown modern practice of church planning, event-driven style church, street preaching, influence thinking, event-style church. Even the social gospel aspect of church life isn't working because Jesus called us to do something different. He called us to be a new creation, a new people, a new community, that we would embody the kingdom, that we would live that out. And there's something about us, when we actually do that, we change the world. In the Old Testament, he said in Exodus 19, 5-6, you will be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. In other words, you will be visibly distinct from everybody else, which he then repeats to the church. The first church, 1 Peter 2:9, he says, you're a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation. In other words, you are to be distinct from everybody else. Not think you're better than them, quite the opposite. But you are to live in a way that is distinctly alternative and visibly different to anybody that sees you. You are, in the sense of you are to love bigger. You are to be more generous. You are to be kinder. I like that idea. I don't know about the rest of you. I can see your faces today. I'm like, I thought that was pretty good. Jesus wants us to be more loving, more kinder, but maybe I've got the interpretation wrong. And so last week we looked at 5 core principles to an AIC. We looked at biblical patterns, and I've been doing this I've been researching this heavily for at least a decade. And this has really excited me, these patterns, even if I don't quite get them. And I think the idea here is if you don't quite get them, that's probably a good thing. So we're going to unpack them over the next couple of months. The first one is that we have to be presence-centered. We've got to put God at the center of everything we do. That's why the worship went on a bit longer today. If God wants that, we'll do that. The second one, this is going to be hard. An economic reset. We've got to change the way we think of and do money as a community. Some of you are like, where's he going to go with that? Well, you're going to find out today. We're ripping the Band-Aid off, and we're going to go for the most awkward, difficult, private area of life that we can imagine. Then we've got new leadership. Next week, I am delighted that after probably 2 years working on this, we've got to the point now where we are able to present to you the new org chart, finally. The new working practice document, the new constitution. It's been seen by a solicitor, it's been approved by the trustees and the spiritual council, and we'll be sharing on that next week. I think Yinka's going to say a bit, Ian Forrester hopefully will say a bit, Dave will say a bit, and I'll share the chart with you. And then on the 24th, we actually vote on whether you want to adopt it or not. And you will, because it's amazing. But there'll be 2 Thursdays leading up to that where you can come and speak to us about any better ideas you have with us. The fourth thing here, and this is again really, really cool, is life shared rhythms. Shared life rhythms, this idea of actually, are there small patterns within the ultimate pattern of how we do life together? We're going to look at that. And then the last one, the non-negotiable one, is we have to be outcast focused. So over the next several weeks, we're going to unpack each one of these, and at the end of them, you're not just going to listen to me for 5 hours, it'll be about 4.5 hours. That's a joke, by the way. If you're new here, do not panic. You will be out for 12, if you're lucky. But we're going to have a discussion. Because the point is, this is not a place where leadership will tell you, all right, this is what we're doing, and you've got to follow us, and it's amazing. We have great graphics. No, this is a place where we are a flipping community, we're a family, and you hear God just as much as we do. And so we want your input. Not problems, not, oh, we're not sure we like it, and all that. Just, what is God saying to us as a community? Because the stuff I'm preaching, I might not like, but I believe it's what God's saying, so suck it up, buttercup. We're going to do it. What does that look like? I'm not sure. Hopefully, you'll tell us. Now, what's amazing is when these 5 principles are lived out, and I'm not talking about just one of them, I'm not just talking about half of them, I'm not just talking about a bit of all of them, I'm talking about when we fully commit to something like these 5 principles, everything changes. When we live these communally, something changes. Folk want to join you when you do this, and folk want to emulate what you're doing. And that's how Jesus changes the world. Acts 2, 44, 47, I love this. We looked at this last week. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property, possessions to give anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God, enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. In other words, those who were coming to follow Jesus. Well, if that is what a community, a church looks like, is it any wonder people followed him? People joined that group of people? No, it's not, because it's flipping amazing. There's no negative ninny-noggins. Everyone's glad. Everyone's got sincere hearts. There's no inauthenticity. There's no people pretending that their life is perfect and judging people. No, they're actually sharing. There's no one without need, like out of struggling too much. Everyone's eating together. This is fantastic. Who wouldn't want to be part of that? And then we see in 1 Peter 2:12, live such good lives among the pagans, not like as them, but around them, so they can see what's going on, that they may see your good deeds and glorify God. In other words, it's perfectly normal for you to live such good, loving, kind expression of who God is to those around you that they praise God even if they don't know him. Because they go, wow, that's good. Wow, what you're doing is amazing. And they give him glory. That's Not just a nice thing to talk about. This is legit. And so the key question, we'll skip this one. The key question is this. Great, Mike, love it. What does that look like? In practice, what's this look like for us? And this is hard. And I'm hoping you'll help me. I'm hoping the revelatory love of God will speak to each one of you and contribute creatively to ideas. Do you know there is no bad idea? We just want ideas. We don't want reasons not to do things. We just want, what is God potentially saying? We call it an umbrella of mercy. You can bring any idea to the table. So in your discussion groups after what I'm about to share, I'm going to get some boards out, and you'll be able to know in your discussion groups what you came up with. But this is cool. So over the next 5 weeks, several weeks, I'm going to unpack each one of those practices, and we'll have a discussion about them. But I want to remind us something we saw during our Ecclesia series, and it's about the synagogue. Weird. But Jesus and Paul, the synagogue was a normal part of their practice of life, their faith. Luke 4:16. He went into the synagogue as was his custom. In other words, this is what he always did and always would do. There's something about the synagogue that could give us an idea about how we're meant to practice as a community of faith. Paul, the same thing. He spoke boldly in the synagogue for 3 months. Okay, now these are just snippets. This was a key part of their life, the framework of the synagogue. Now, when we think of church, we think of sacred space. Actually, when it came to the first Christians, buildings weren't technically the sacred space. They weren't the temple. They weren't going to the temple. They were the temple. I think somewhere we've forgotten that. So this is great, this building, but it is a building. And God's presence is here, but because we're here. This is the Theodotus inscription, roughly between 30 and 40 years after the birth of Christ, that this was allegedly written. Now, I'll leave you to read that for yourselves. It says this. I want to do it in a venerable voice, but I won't. Theodotus, son of Vetanus, priest and head of the synagogue, son of a head of the synagogue, and grandson of a head of the synagogue. In other words, he knows what he's doing. He's been around. There's legacy here. Built the synagogue for the reading of the law, in other words, the scriptures, for the teaching of the commandments, in other words, how we live the kingdom, as well as the guest rooms. Interesting. The chambers and the water fittings as an inn. Interesting. For those in need from abroad. The synagogue which his fathers founded with the elders and the Simonides. That's what it says. Number of things here fascinate me. It's a hostel. It's an education center. Other things that we found out, it's actually a sessional court where they would settle local disputes. It's a food and hydration station. I like saying that. Food and hydration station. And it's a respite for the sick. So is it any wonder when you see Jesus and he's around the synagogue that he's constantly surrounded by people that are sick that he heals? He's constantly around foreigners, that people that are not like that. Is it any wonder that he's always teaching? Well, no, because that's what the synagogue did. Think about modern day church. Look at that and think, I'm not sure it's quite that. Maybe there's bits of it. Maybe some churches are doing aspects of it, but it interests me. This is an insight into how Jesus is telling us to be a new way of humanity. I've written here, the early church embodied this, and culture eventually reorganized around it, and it changed the world. It's my belief that if we operate as an AIC, if we adopt some of the things that we're looking at, well, I'd say all of them, then we'll change the world too, actually. And so I want to start on an area that is not easy to talk about, and you might well hear what I'm not saying, so I'm going to try and qualify it as much as I can. I'm more bothered about the idea than anything else. But one of the core contributors to stress, and therefore illness, to hopelessness, and it affects suicide on a large scale, and it's massive in terms of marital conflict and then potentially divorce, is finances. We fight over them, we're shamed by them, we don't talk about them, not much. And if you hear about them in church, just give more, and you'll have more. I think we're shamed by it. I think we're secretive about it. And I think that's really sad. So let's change the narrative on that. Let's have some honesty around that, because if one of the core things that we see in the patterns of an AIC in Scripture and throughout Scripture is an economic reset, then finance matters. Now, Jesus isn't against you having money, he's against you money having you. And that's the difference. We talked last week about this difference between accumulating wealth and distributing wealth. We need to be better at how we operate financially, individually, but as a community. So let's talk about this. Is that okay? You up for some interesting ideas about communally how we can live? Right, we had 12 there, I reckon. Let's see how many we get after I talk about it. The economic reset, this is the one we're looking at today. What if we created a community where no one had to worry about financial lack? Like no one in this room had to ever worry about financial lack ever again. Blink an eye, that would be pretty cool. That would be probably spectacular. What if we were a community that moved one another out of financial struggle, stress, and shame? Where we could say, actually, you know what, I'm struggling financially. Just if you could pray for me, that would be great. Not in a manipulative way, not in a way of trying to get money. We see that a lot, but just in terms of changing the conversation. Now, it's important I give some qualifications here before you all freak out. And I want to deal with the more analytical of you. Look, we understand what I'm about to share is, I'm not talking about removing personal responsibility. I'm not talking about creating an unhealthy dependence, okay? And all of these ideas are to be voluntary. They are not coerced. You're not absolutely have to take part in this, but I'm hoping voluntarily to some degree this will certainly happen amongst the partners. And also I think there needs to be guards around this, safeguarding around this. I don't know the answers. This is literally just my thinking. Maybe to take full part of these things, you have to have been a partner for 3 years. Otherwise, someone might just become a partner here just because we're going to do something radically amazing to help them. You see where I'm going. There's a lot to process here. I'm less bothered about that. I'm more bothered right now about the ideas that God might be stimulating. So, if you are prepared for me to whet your appetite a little bit and freak you out, let's get to it. Number 1. Mutual aid fund. The idea here is creating a community pot that's available to you, okay, for smaller and more sudden financial struggles, the unexpected. I'm talking things like sudden job loss. Because if that happens, you know, no matter who you listen to, the stats tell me that most people haven't saved up 3 to 6 months of savings if you lose your job. So there's going to be a problem. So maybe we can solve that. Emergency dental surgery. Maybe you forgot to brush your teeth for 3 years and it suddenly hit you in the face, but you haven't got $5,000 to fix every single one of them. Maybe you broke your washing machine. It's just gone. You haven't got a savings pot. You're in trouble. And quite frankly, no one wants to sit next to you anymore. What if, for whatever reason, could be anything. Could be a bill's come out, or there's been a bank error, or you're just struggling week to week or day to day. You need a food drop. Maybe, and I've seen this one before, what if your boiler just goes, not working, and it's snowing, and you got no money? What are you going to do? Maybe we should fix that. Now, some of you, if you're affluent, God bless you, brilliant. Don't panic. But these are real issues for a lot of people. So that's one idea, mutual aid fund. That's not too hard, was it? Another idea, I love this one. Oh my gosh, I love this one. Jubilee debt system. Now, we looked at last week, we saw that every 50 years people's debts were cleared and they got to restart and slaves were put back to their owners. And it was just this revolutionary system that God asked them to instigate. Now, just a little bit of research will tell you that the average UK household here is in debt by anywhere between £8,000 to £16,000. It's quite a lot of money. So what if we removed the shame and the stigma around that financial struggle? So the idea here would be some kind of communal approach to eliminating Eden Partners' debts. Now, I'm not saying we're not going to do that for people outside of the community, but predominantly we've got to start somewhere and display a different way of living. Obviously, if we do this, we've got to pay off the real high interest ones first. We want to communicate with various charities, banks. CAP's quite good, but not completely fantastic. But there's groups out there that could help us that we could certainly work with to try and support this. And then I was thinking, what a privilege to be playing a part in clearing someone's debt. And we should get rid of the shame and stigma around that, and we should celebrate that, and we should just get together and have a meal and go, this is amazing, your family is now debt-free, you get to restart. I mean, that would change the lives of so many people. It would be incredible. I'm rattling through them because I want to get discussion. So, slightly radical. Number 3, this is one, I was literally thinking, we've got this big shed and it's full of junk. And then we've got these 2 trunks and they're full of stuff. And it was during the winter and I was outside. And I opened them all up and I looked through them and then flipping it, we got a lot of stuff here. I mean, we've given a lot of it. My father-in-law, great, he didn't need any more, we had it. And I was just thinking, can we just do a weird survey? If you own a lawnmower, can you put your hand up? That's a lot of lawnmowers. Do we all need to own a lawnmower? Just ask it. It's weird, isn't it? Another one, less likely, who owns a pressure washer? Again, that's quite a lot of pressure washers. Do you see where I'm going here? So, think about the consumption level of all that stuff. Think about the fact we all have to then store it safely somewhere. It's an interesting idea, but what if instead of each one of us having something bigger that we only use a little bit, maybe a maximum of 5 times, 6 times a year, we actually had some kind of communal lockup where you can sign it out, we maintain it, and then you don't need to worry about it. I think that sounds pretty cool. I've got a few things here, lawnmowers. I don't know why I'm obsessed with lawnmowers this morning. It's because I don't like mowing my lawn. I'm hoping that if there's a community lockout, I'll go, well, I need a lawnmower, and one of you kind people will go, well, I'll bring it to you. And, well, if you're there, you may as well, while you're at it. Hedge trimmers. I don't know why, but I've got a hedge trimmer. I don't even know where it came from. I have no recollection of buying it, but we have one. And so I am desperate outside the front of a house to trim a hedge. The reason I haven't is I like my arms. Pressure washers, brought that up again. Ladders. How many own a ladder? Who uses a ladder every day in the house? Not for work. No one. Once a week? You use a ladder once a week? Oh, okay. You nearly had me there. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Come on. A few things. Carpet cleaners. We were going to rent one, and we needed it kind of every year. We need to rent. Our cat likes to poo on our carpet. Too much information, but... Ugh. So we bought one because it was so much cheaper. So we've got a carpet cleaner. If you want to borrow it. I think one of you's borrowed it before. Trailers for going on holiday. A big one. I've spent helping my dad move twice. And unpacking, I think we've spent, I don't know, $650 on vans in the last couple of years. Maybe we could have a church van to use for moving. Maybe that would save a lot of money. I don't know if community, how many times you've used a van for moving stuff or rented one. Just out of interest, let's do that. Who's rented a van in the last year for moving stuff? Oh, not loads. Maybe we don't have a van. Do you see where I'm going though, right? This is pretty obvious stuff. I think this would save money. I think it would save storage. I think it would save consumption for the planet, that we're not just consuming all this stuff and buying all this stuff. And so these are some ideas. This mutual aid fund, this Jubilee debt system, this idea of a resource library, and it gets more than this, which we'll look at in due course. But I wonder in this community if we start processing like this, and that's really the goal this morning, is putting some flesh on the AIC idea. This is just one of them, right? So imagine how interesting it's going to be if we start changing things. Now I know there's questions, how does it work, blah, 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 what does that mean? I'm not interested in that right now. I'm interested, as soon as we start trying to work out a reason not to do something, and there are 100 reasons not to do anything, we stop ideas coming forward, okay? Now next week I'm going to be sharing our new leadership model, which again, really excited about, this new Eden ecosystem, which I'm excited about. But I want to close today with a discussion question. And it's simply this, and you can rephrase it however you like, you'll get the gist. If we were free to reimagine how we supported or lived with each other financially, what could we create together that doesn't exist yet? Now, don't worry about not existing. Worry about the fact of, what could we do that Mike hasn't just said that could be different as a community? No bad ideas. There's no bad ideas. Well, some of them will be terrible ideas, but you get the point. There's no bad ideas. Just speak, just declare, just talk, just write them down on the board, and we'll review this and we'll feed back during the week about what this looks like. Because I think if we're going to have an economic reset, you will come up with grander, simpler, incredible ideas.